Hey guys, as we are celebrating Columbus Day, hopefully you are celebrating it, and you haven't fallen victim to the narrative of, hey, we have to cancel Columbus, and instead it's Indigenous Peoples Day. And by the way, I'm not anti-Indigenous people. Had it not been for Indigenous people, the Pilgrims never would have survived. In fact, when Columbus first lands, he meets the Taino. I think there's a lot of ways to pronounce it. People would argue, and maybe based on where you're from, there could be a different pronunciation. But the first tribe Columbus meets, they were very friendly. And had it not been for some of the native allies in American history, a lot of the story would be different. A lot of the people that survived would have died. So this is not suggesting that we shouldn't celebrate Indigenous people, but maybe it is maybe worth asking, like, well, which Indigenous people are we celebrating? Because not all of the Indigenous people that lived here were nice people. There were some tribes that were warring tribes that not only would they conquer other tribes, part of what they would do in their conquest, sometimes they would cannibalize other tribes. Sometimes they would torture to death those that they had already captured. There was a lot of brutality that would happen. And I think Disney has misled a lot of people to think that, hey, the natives were all peaceful and they just painted with the colors of the wind, right? And it was the colonizers, the white man, that brought war to this world. That's silly. In the history of the world, there's always been people at war. There's always been conquest. One of the more civilizing things that's happened in the world was the influence of Christianity, was the influence of the Bible, was the influence of Jesus. And if you look in America prior to the influence of the Bible, Christianity, and Jesus, that's the same thing going on here with the natives who were here as it was for peoples all around the world who did not know what the Bible said. Now back to Columbus. As people, even today, maybe depending on what side of the political aisle you are on, are celebrating or villainizing Columbus, there's a lot of accusations against Columbus. And I think it really is worth even pondering what would have happened if Columbus had never discovered the new world, right? Never discovered America. And there's a lot of interesting trails you can take in that thought process, because somebody eventually would have discovered it. And some people might argue, well, yeah, but the Vikings, they had been in Canada, the area we know as Canada, and maybe even has gone as far as Minnesota. So there were people that knew the land, and that's valid. But certainly the Western Europeans, Columbus, the people in that region were not familiar with this. And so when Columbus discovers this is a brand new notion for so many people that the world was bigger than they thought, and it's different than they thought. But with that being said, today, again, being Columbus Day, people are looking at Columbus and going, yeah, but this guy was so evil. He was a genocidal maniac and he enslaved all these natives. And I mean, plus, like, he was kind of a moron. He was trying to go to the West Indies and he lands in like this totally different place. There's all these accusations, which largely are so ungrounded historically. The reason they have persisted is because our education system is so bad, we don't know the actual story. If you want to learn more of the actual story, I would encourage you, one of the options we have is the American story, the beginnings. We actually tell part of the story of Columbus. We document, we footnote, just to give an idea of what actually happened. There was 4 voyages, what happened on those voyages. Also on the Wall Builders website, wallbuilders.com, there's a lot of articles that address some of these specific criticisms of Columbus. And the bottom line is Columbus wasn't a perfect guy, but he's not guilty of most of the sins of which he's accused today. And part of the thing that's worth identifying even now, there's nobody in world history that has had more statues erected to them than Columbus. Now, I say that there's one more individual. Jesus has the most statues around the world. Columbus has the second most statues around the world. So for anyone who wasn't God, Columbus has the most statues. And people weren't erecting these statues because they didn't know the story of Columbus. It's actually because they knew the story better than we know it today. And so in the midst of a villainizing cancel culture that says we shouldn't celebrate Columbus, we should cancel Columbus, I would challenge you, go back and learn the story of Columbus. He wasn't perfect, but he's not guilty of most of the sins of which he's accused today. To find out more, again, you can go to the American Story of the Beginnings, go to the Wall Builders website, so much stuff that is there. As we are looking at what's happening in culture, don't fall victim to cancel culture. Learn the story, celebrate the good, acknowledge the bad, but don't let them take away people that have done incredible contributions in human history.